The whole love and hip-hop community was meant to remain quiet that night. But when Bambi opened her mouth and revealed what she said was the truth about Jasmine and Yandy, everything fell apart. The moment is currently being replayed by fans, who are disputing, mumbling, and attempting to decipher the meaning behind the omitted words. Because Jasmine and Yandy's relationship isn't merely casual, according to Bambi, it's profound. It's concealed. Additionally, it is sufficient to sabotage alliances that are already tenuous. The tension reached a deadly peak when Rayface intervened just when everyone thought they could relax. He didn't respond calmly. It wasn't planned. It was loud, unfiltered, and rather dangerous. He didn't only talk. He made it plain that anyone who opposed him or his group would be sorry. The room went cold. The audience let out a gasp. And within minutes, social media was ablaze. Was Bambi being honest? Was she making something up to get attention? Or did she just provide the kind of information that might cause the greatest upheaval of the season, destroy friendships, and reveal lies? Bambi smiled calmly as she sat across the table, but there was a weight in her eyes that suggested she wasn't going to say something light. She drew closer to Zell and made a statement that caused everyone in the room to shift uneasily, and her voice, which had been low at first, began to increase. According to her, Jasmine and Yandy had been maintaining a relationship so intimate and covert that even the Frost family would be shocked if it were ever revealed in its entirety. It wasn't just a casual friendship, she implied. Zell blinked, uncertain whether to shrug it off or ask for more information. It was a calculated connection that blurred the lines between loyalty and betrayal. Bambi leaned back inside, more like a pressure release than a carefree breath, before he could respond. She claimed to have heard rumors for months that Yandy and Jasmine were working together behind the scenes and acting in unexpected ways. The audience fell into that stifling stillness that people know occurs when the truth feels too outrageous to be disregarded. As soon as she finished speaking, viewers were compelled to repeatedly play back her statement. Was it envy? Was it a last-ditch effort to get attention? Or was Bambi actually revealing something that may tear apart the bonds in their entire circle? Instantly, online buzz began. Hour after hour, timelines exploded with screenshots, fan theories, and clips. There were others who thought Bambi was overstating her stay, pertinent, but another side vowed that she had at last given expression to what had always been clear. However, the silence wasn't maintained for long. The atmosphere changed from uneasy to explosive as soon as Rayface learnt what was being stated. The thought of secrets being revealed without warning didn't sit well with him, and his response was nothing short of alarming. In a passionate tone that pierced all of the room's conversations, he made it plain that no one has the authority to bring up his name or his circle in unfounded conversation. His snarling statements, "Anybody got something to say about me? They better be ready to deal with the consequences," caused even those who were not involved in the drama to pause. Eyes darted from face to face, whispering, waiting to see who would respond to him. Jasmine, caught in the midst, she gave a frustrated shake of her head. None of it was true, she insisted. That whatever Bambi was saying was really a perverse rumor designed to stir up trouble. "I never said nothing about you. I never plotted with nobody," she stated firmly, but there was a glimmer of discomfort in her eyes. Even Yandy, who had been attempting to remain composed, had to answer. Before speaking, she held out her hand a little, as though requesting patience from the audience. "Look, I got my own struggles. I don't have time for people making up stories about me," she said. However, the uncertainty was already present. Everyone was at least briefly led to question whether there was some truth concealed in the chaos. By the way Bambi spoke and the assurance in her tone, that is the challenging aspect of this planet. Whether a rumor is genuine or not is irrelevant once it has been spread. It starts to lead an independent existence. The original words are so twisted and reshaped by fans that they hardly notice them anymore. Social media threads quickly descended into arguments, with some even unearthing earlier pictures of Jasmine and Yandy together at events and claimed they were the unrecognized receipts that no one wanted to admit. Bambi, however, refused to give up. She intensified her accusations, telling Zell that the Frost family would be forced to acknowledge what they had been concealing if the truth were ever revealed in its entirety. She spoke steadily, her tone bearing the weight of someone who believed everything she said. "Everyone thinks Rasheeda has been hurt. Everybody thinks Kirk has been betrayed. But what if I told you they all have been smiling in each other's faces this whole time?" she asked. Zell looked at the cameras and shook his head in shock, as though he was silently questioning whether this was all real. Bambi wasn't finished though. Once more, she leaned forward and nearly whispered. This period, depicting late-night phone conversations, private meetings, and delicate gestures that the unobservant could easily miss. She whispered, "They think they're slick, but you can't keep that kind of thing hidden forever," which caused the room to tremble once more. Rayface, who was still pacing around, laughed, but not in a funny way. It was scathing, almost derisive, and caused everyone to reposition themselves in their chairs. He said, "Y'all really want to test me tonight?" In a louder voice, "You think talking in riddles will keep you safe? It won't. Anyone dragging my name or my people? They're going to learn real quick." The warning hung heavily, but it did little except stoke the fire rather than silence the crowd. Yandy, clearly angry, she crossed her arms and shook her head, saying firmly, "I don't know what's worse, people spreading lies or people threatening violence over lies." Her words were filled with frustration, but she maintained her composure. Nevertheless, there was no denying the tension between her and Bambi, and fans watching at home could almost feel the electricity sparking through the screen. Even people who would normally stay out of the drama couldn't help but look in, knowing that they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed and analyzed long after the camera stopped rolling. And that's the thing. In a world where alliances, betrayals, and storylines that occasionally Bambi had chosen to shake things up, and the consequences were already beginning to show. Whispers became debates, debates became heated arguments, and before anyone knew it, friendships were breaking under the weight of speculation. However, what no one anticipated was how quickly the lines between real and scripted can be blurred. And one leak or whispered secret can change everything. As the night wore on, the whispers only got louder. One voice after another started chiming in, each person certain they held a piece of the puzzle that no one else could see. Eventually, more voices joined in, adding their own versions, their own receipts, and their own threats to the mix. What started as a single leak had already turned into a storm. Social media was already ablaze, and hashtags featuring Jasmine and Yandy's names were growing by the minute. It was no longer just Bambi's claim. It was the result of what happens when someone shakes the table and everyone else fumbles to pick up the pieces. Yandy's in the audience leaned closer, trying to hear every word, while younger fans hurried to record live clips on their phones, eager to be the first to upload them online. Bambi sat resolutely, her gaze fixed on Yandy, who by this point had given up trying to hide her frustration. "So this is what we doing now," Yandy muttered, shaking her head. "Making up stories because real life ain't interesting enough." Bambi shot back without turned away for a while, mumbling something under her breath that only those closest could hear. But when she turned back, she raised her voice. "I don't know, nobody know," she said in a loud, almost taunting tone, and the audience gasped. The denial sounded forceful, but the trouble with denial is that it never stops the rumor, it only feeds it. "I'll say it again. I'm not in any secret alliance. I'm not sneaking about with no one, and I'm not covering anything for no one." In the meantime, Rayface was still pacing like a caged animal, his words earlier threatening enough, but now he looked like he was about to explode again, pointing a finger across the room and barking. Fans watching at home swiftly clipped Jasmine's words, overlaying them with old videos, looking for contradictions and asking why she sounded so defensive if there was really nothing to hide. The room erupted once more as people stood up, chairs scraped the floor, and voices rose above one another in a chorus of debates, with one side demanding proof. "I stated what I said. Anyone got anything to do with me, they can go to sleep." It was that simple. The energy was raw, wild, and irrepressible throughout it all. Bambi refused to back down and leaned into the uproar, shouting, "Everyone want to play innocent, but I see what I see," her words piercing the cacophony. "They don't post everything," she said. "They don't reveal everything, but trust me when I suggest that they are closer than they appear." "Bambi, you have to know what you're saying. You don't think this can mess up families, reputations, and people's lives," Zell said, turning to her with desperate eyes. She didn't flinch as he looked at her. "But if it's true, then it deserves to come out. Regardless of who it hurts." The line struck a chord. Online fans quickly dubbed it the quote of the night, turning it into memes and captions. While some criticized her for using drama to gain influence, others applauded her bravery, but her words were widely shared. Yandy, who never backs down, got up from her chair and turned to face Bambi. Her voice trembled a little, but her presence dominated the room, and Bambi tilted her head, grinning as though the outburst only proved her. Listen, you don't get to decide what my life looks like. You don't get to spin my tale for your enjoyment. You think you know me? You don't. Point. She continued slowly, dragging out each word like a knife. Funny how the loudest one in the room usually gets the most to conceal. Rayface slammed his fist down on the table, the thud resonating like a drum beat, and gasps filled the room again. Enough, he yelled. You wish to discuss secrets? Okay, but don't mention the names of my people. If it's true, I don't care. If it's a lie, I don't care. Anyone crossing this line had best be prepared to confront me. Suffocating and indisputable, the threat hovered in the air like smoke. Jasmine's gaze expanded. Rasheeda squirmed uneasily in her chair, and Kirk looked down at the table as though the answers were buried in the wood, avoiding eye contact completely. Grain. The fact that no one could tell whether Rayface was bluffing or truly meant what he said only made things worse. His reputation indicated that he wasn't the kind to make baseless threats, and the hysteria was only heightened by the ambiguity. Fans were already analyzing every detail outside the room. The frenzied guessing was unending, and one fan tweeted, "The way Kirk didn't even look up tells me everything I need to know." Another fan responded, "No, Yandy is too defensive. Bambi is definitely onto something." The arguments continued late into the night, with voices rising and falling like waves crashing against the shore. At one point, Spice tried to step in, raising her voice above the crowd, saying, "We supposed to be celebrating, not tearing each other apart." But even her words couldn't put out the fire that Bambi had lit. This was exactly what producers dreamed of, but cast members dreaded. The line was another dagger, and even though Yandy rolled her eyes, the damage was already done. Social media didn't wait, and the video went viral within minutes, captioned with dramatic emojis and phrases like bombshell and game changer. She turned back to Zell with a tired smile, saying, "See, this is what happens when you tell a little bit of truth in a room full of people who built their lives on lies." The energy continued to build even hours later, as Yandy continued to shake her head as if to will the words away, and Jasmine sat with her arms crossed, clearly finished with the conversation. Kirk whispered something into Rasheeda's ear, but the camera didn't capture it clearly, and that one ambiguous moment sparked even more theories online. Rayface, however, refused to go quietly. "Y'all think this is entertainment, but this is my life," he said, standing erect and gesturing to the cameras. "Feel free to play with it, but don't be shocked if you get burned." For the first time all night, the room was silent after the last explosion, which was terrifying. No one spoke or moved. The murmurs, the steps, and the quiet anxiety that pervaded the room all told the same tale, and it became evident at that very moment that whatever Bambi had leaked was more than just words. It was a storm with no end in sight. Fans at home leaned closer to their screens as if they could somehow catch the truth hidden in those uneasy faces, and Bambi didn't look shaken. Instead, she leaned back in her chair with a smirk. The silence that followed Rayface's warning was almost heavier than the shouting that preceded it, and everyone sat frozen, looking around the room, waiting for someone else to break the tension. The words were like gasoline on a fire, and Yandy jumped up, throwing her hands in the air, saying, "You see, girl, you're not about to sit here and paint me like some villain in your little story." She crossed her legs slowly, as if she had already won the argument, and her voice was just loud enough to break the silence. "You see, when people threaten instead of explaining, that's how you know the truth hurts. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the battles I fight every single day, and you think you can just throw my name around like it's nothing? You're out of line." The crowd hummed, voices low but buzzing with energy. She snapped, her voice cracking with the strain of holding herself together. A few gave a nod of agreement. Others looked at each other doubtfully. However, there was no denying that Yandy's tirade had caused the room to shift once more. In contrast, Jasmine sat silently for a while, drumming her fingernails on the table, and then she spoke in a steady, low voice. "I'm not really sure why I'm putting up with this bullshit, but let me clarify for once. I have no secret relationship with Kirk or Rasheeda, and I have no secret relationship with Yandy either. Whatever you believe you saw, you were mistaken. Bambi, however, was not going to back down. The Bahamas excursion was therefore a hoax. They were phony late-night calls. The related posts that you all unintentionally enjoyed at the wasn't. The same time also phony. With a raised eyebrow, she inquired. Even though she hadn't produced her receipts, the way she described everything so nonchalantly gave the impression that she did. The room was filled with gasps, and Jasmine's denial felt weaker all of a sudden. Online fans instantly began looking through past vacation photos for posts that matched, and in a matter of minutes, images were already circulating as alleged proof. With a tired voice, Zell scratched his temples. Do you realize, Bambi, that what you're saying has the potential to destroy families? Are you concerned about the harm at all? The damage has already been done, Bambi said calmly. Every season, I'm not the one deceiving millions of people. I'm being straightforward. Rayface laughed sharply, but his laugh was devoid of humor. His voice lowered, almost growling, as he cautioned, now what you're doing is playing with fire, and you keep playing, you're going to get burned. When Rasheeda did speak, her voice was trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. I'm not sure who said that, but my marriage isn't your plot, Bambi. Since things didn't go your way, you've been resentful, and now you want to include Kirk, me, and everyone else in your mess. Although the remarks were harsh, Bambi simply leaned closer, her smile remaining unwavering. If only I were the one saying it, Rasheeda. But darling, the streets speak. The supporters are not blind. You can conceal a lot, but you can't stay hidden indefinitely. Voices clashed over one another as the room erupted once more, and Spice attempted to mediate once more. She said, enough, y'all. This ain't the way, in a frustrated tone. However, no one paid attention. Secrets cannot be kept inside once they are revealed. The fan response was intensifying outside. TikTok modifications were overflowing. Timelines, Instagram lives were back-to-back, and YouTube commentary channels had already started posting their in-depth analyses of the controversy. Some admirers supported Bambi and gave her praise for apparently having the guts to speak what everyone else was afraid to say. She was characterized by others as resentful, disorganized, and attention-seeking. In any case, she had prevailed. People were conversing, and the volume of their voices was only increasing. The glasses rattled when Yandy slapped her hand down on the table. Let me explain. I'm not playing games here. Provide evidence if you have it. Otherwise, don't mention me because I don't care about my reputation. Fans were only made more hungry by the demand for evidence, searching the internet for anything that would support or refute the accusations. There was one hazy picture of Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jasmine together in the same eatery. Despite being months old, it was sufficient to ignite the comment sections. One fan said, "Y'all reaching? See, they've always been cool. They were simply in the same location." Rayface, meantime, became increasingly irritated and took out his phone. As though about to display something, he waved it in the air. You want receipts? I have them. However, no one will be upset about being exposed when I release them. The audience was momentarily quieted by the fear of receipts, and Jasmine appeared alarmed. Go ahead, she urged. Let the world see what you've been hiding. Yandy appeared enraged, and Bambi leaned forward as if she had been waiting for this very moment. Time is of the essence. But instead of showing anything, Rayface slid his phone back into his pocket and smirked. Nah, not tonight. I'll give you guys more time to perspire. You all deserve that. Hashtags like Thotty Frost Family, Secret, and Polly T trended overnight, and the strain on all parties involved increased by the hour. The tease only made matters worse, as fans were now certain there was something to conceal and curiosity reached a fever pitch. Bambi's voice broke through once more, softer this time but no less sharp. You see, I don't even need to prove nothing. The way you guys are reacting proves it to me. Production rushed to control the fallout, but it was too late. Once the internet got hold of a narrative, it ran wild, unstoppable, untamed, and untamed. And she was right. Fans found the yelling, defensiveness, and threats suspicious, and even those who initially questioned her started to question whether she was telling the truth. As the evening wore on, friendships appeared more brittle than ever, and Rasheeda, avoided looking into Jasmine's eyes. The tension in the room refused to let up, and Kirk remained silent as Yandy stood as rigid as a statue. Rayface's rage simmered just beyond the surface, and Bambi sat there with that same smirk as though she had been waiting for this storm all along. It was no longer just about Bambi's claim. It had become a struggle of egos, reputations, and survival in a circle where even the slightest rumor could leave a permanent scar. Every look, every sigh, and every whispered word carried the weight of suspicion. At last, Jasmine stood up, her voice louder than it had been all night. Every season, it's Jasmine, and this Jasmine acts like she doesn't have a life of her own, doesn't ask to be pulled back into this mess, and isn't a part of whatever dream you guys are trying to sell. I'm sick of being everyone's target. And you? After all those speeches you gave about me? After acting like I destroyed your family, now they claim you've been cool with me the entire time. So what was it? Rasheeda? Was all that suffering for the cameras? The room became silent once more. Rasheeda's tone was sharp yet tinged with hurt. At last, with Kirk shifting uneasily next to her, Rasheeda's lips formed a tight line and she said, I did feel pain. I did feel betrayal. But people change. Situations change. Her voice was low but clear. Bambi leaned closer, taking advantage of the situation. You admit that you've been cool? Maybe I forgave when no one expected me to, she said, but don't twist that into something it's not. Rasheeda's eyes furrowed. I didn't say anything like that. Don't put words in my mouth. However, the hesitancy and lack of a resolute denial were plenty for fans to go crazy on the internet. Videos of within minutes, Rasheeda's face became viral, with captions such as caught, slipping, and the truth always shows in the eyes. I don't know why my name is even in this. I didn't ask to be dragged into Rasheeda and Jasmine's story. If they cool, let's go, Yandy said, throwing her hands up, fatigued by the back and forth. Oh, but see, your name was in it from the beginning. Don't act like you were a mere bystander. You knew, but don't drag me down to get your headline, Bambi. Bambi's grin grew. You don't know nothing about me, Yandy said, her voice trembling with rage, and you played your part quietly, hoping no one would notice. However, I saw the jab cut deep and Yandy's composure break. You want to make me your villain? Okay, but don't be shocked when the truth about you is revealed as well. The danger changed the atmosphere. Rayface grabbed the opportunity and stepped forward with a loud voice, saying, This is exactly why I said what I said. You guys are feeding on lies, dragging names, and starting wars over nothing. I don't care who's friends with whom. Bambi's sneer cracked somewhat. For the first time, his words were no longer only a warning. They seemed like a promise. Jasmine's eyes widened, Rasheeda shook her head, and Kirk murmured something inaudible under his breath. I don't care who went on what trip, but if you keep pushing, don't be shocked when somebody pushes back harder. A voice from the back of the room, one that hadn't spoken all night, broke through the commotion, and it was Spice again, but her tone had changed. You guys are acting like you're the only ones with secrets. The camera zoomed in, catching every twitch, blink, and tremor of uneasiness. The line struck like a bomb, causing gasps, eyes to flicker, and even Bambi to seem surprised. What do you mean by that? But believe me, if all the truth came out tonight, half this room wouldn't even be able to face the cameras tomorrow. Her confidence faltering, she demanded, Spice only, let's just say some of you are throwing stones when your own house is made of glass, she said, her lips twisting into a knowing grin. Fans went into an internet frenzy after receiving the mysterious warning. Theories grew in number in a matter of minutes. Spice was referring to whom? What was the secret she was implying? And why did Bambi become uneasy for the first time throughout the evening? The tension in the room increased. As the disputes went on, at last, Kirk stood up, his voice steady yet tired. This must end. Everyone has something to conceal.